learning English smooth and enjoyable.
So we're diving into learning English quickly today.
Lots of material here.
Yeah, a mountain of tips and tricks.
Yeah.
I've got to say, some of these tips are pretty standard,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm really curious to see what unique insights we can kind of unearth together today.
Yeah, you know what's fascinating to me?
Yeah.
Is how much emphasis all of these sources place on setting these really clear and concrete goals
Right off the bat.
right from the start.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just be like, oh, I want to learn English.
Mm-hmm.
You need to define what success looks like for you.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
It's like setting out on a journey
Yeah.
without a destination in mind.
Exactly.
You could wander aimlessly forever.
Right.
So how can our listener actually go about setting these effective goals?
Well, these sources suggest breaking down that big, daunting goal of learning English
Right.
into smaller, more manageable steps.
Okay.
So instead of saying, like, I want to be fluent, maybe your goal is, I want to have a basic conversation with a native speaker in 3 months.
I like that.
Yeah.
It makes the whole thing seem a lot less overwhelming.
Exactly.
But even with a clear goal in mind,
Right.
sticking to a consistent learning routine can be really, really tough.
Absolutely.
One of these guides recommends something called spaced repetition.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever heard of this?
Absolutely. Spaced repetition is a fantastic way to really leverage the science of memory
Okay.
to make your learning stick.
Interesting.
It's based on the idea that we forget things over time,
Right. Yeah.
but each time we revisit that information, it takes longer to forget it again.
So instead of cramming vocabulary for hours on end,
Right.
it's better to review those words at specific intervals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, like, imagine you learn a new word today, you review it again tomorrow, then a few days later, then a week later, and so on.
Yeah.
And each time you revisit that word, you're strengthening that neural pathway in your brain,
Interesting.
making it less likely to fade away.
That's a really brilliant strategy.
Yeah,
It takes the pressure off of trying to memorize everything at once.
for sure.
But even with all the right tools and techniques in place,
Right.
I think a lot of people, myself included, struggle with finding the time to actually learn a new language.
Yeah, you hit on a crucial point there.
Yeah.
It's about weaving English into the fabric of your day,
Okay.
not treating it like a separate chore.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of saying, like, oh, I need to study English for an hour tonight,
Right.
look for those little pockets of time where you can squeeze in some practice.
Okay, so instead of like an hour-long study session, maybe I spend 10 minutes listening to an English podcast on my commute
Exactly.
or read a news article online during my lunch break.
Yeah, those small bursts of exposure, they add up over time.
Okay.
And they're much more sustainable than trying to block out this huge chunk of time that you might not even have.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
This reminds me of something else I read about forming habits. It suggested attaching your English practice to an existing habit.
Oh,
So, for example, if you always have a cup of coffee in the morning,
right.
you could make it a rule to listen to an English news podcast while you're drinking it.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
You're piggybacking on an existing routine, which makes it much easier to stick with.
makes
And
sense.
once you start noticing those small wins, it creates this positive feedback loop
Yeah.
that keeps you motivated.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together.
Yeah.
It's not just about learning grammar rules and memorizing vocabulary.
Right.
It's about creating this lifestyle
Mm.
where English is just naturally integrated.
Totally.
But what about those people who say they just don't have the time?
I would challenge them to reframe their thinking.
Okay.
We all have the same 24 hours in a day.
Sure.
It's about prioritizing and making conscious choices.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you swap out 30 minutes of social media scrolling
Yeah.
for 30 minutes of English practice.
You know, that's a really good point. It's easy to get caught up in those time-wasting activities without even realizing it.
Right.
But I have to admit,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the sheer amount of resources available for learning English can feel really overwhelming.
Oh, absolutely. There's so many apps and websites, courses, books.
It's a lot.
It can be really hard to know where to start.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
They get paralyzed by choice and end up doing nothing at all.
So what's the antidote to that paralysis?
I think it starts with identifying your learning style.
Oh, yeah?
Are you someone who thrives in a structured classroom environment?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you prefer self-paced learning?
Right.
Do you learn best by listening, by reading, or by doing?
That's a good point. I'm definitely a visual learner.
Yeah.
So I gravitate towards things like flashcards and visual dictionaries.
Mm-hmm.
But someone who's more auditory might prefer podcasts or audiobooks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And once you have a better understanding of how you learn best, you can start exploring resources that actually align with your preferences.
Okay.
And don't be afraid to experiment.
Right.
Try different things until you find what clicks for you.
So instead of feeling overwhelmed by the sheer volume of options,
Right.
we can kind of turn it into an advantage by
Yeah.
choosing the tools that resonate with us the most.
Absolutely. It's about making the learning process enjoyable and engaging.
I love that.
Yeah,
And when you're having fun, you're much more likely to stick with it.
exactly. It's like finding the right workout routine.
Oh, yeah.
If you enjoy it,
Yeah.
you're more likely to show up consistently.
Right.
And just like finding the right workout routine,
Mm-hmm.
finding the right language learning resources might take some trial and error.
Okay.
But once you find those tools and techniques that make learning English feel less like a chore and more like a fun challenge, you're well on your way to success.
This has been so insightful.
Yeah.
I feel like we've already given our listener a lot to chew on.
We have covered a lot of ground, but we've only just scratched the surface of what this mountain of material has to offer.
Right.
Let's take a break and come back for part 2,
Okay.
where we'll delve deeper into the world of active learning and immersion.
Sounds good.
All right.
Okay.
Welcome back. I am eager to kind of delve into some of these more active learning strategies.
Okay.
One that really caught my eye
Mm-hmm.
was this idea of shadowing.
Okay.
It seems simple enough, but
Yeah.
it can be incredibly powerful.
Okay. I'll admit the term shadowing makes me think of a detective trailing a suspect.
Right.
What exactly does it mean
Mm-hmm.
in the context of language learning?
So it's about mimicking,
Right?
like an actor rehearsing a role.
Mhm.
So you choose an audio or video clip in English.
Okay.
You listen closely.
Right.
And you try to repeat what you hear as accurately as possible,
Okay.
matching the speaker's pace, their intonation, even the pauses.
So I'm not just trying to say the words correctly,
Right.
but also capture the music of the language.
Precisely. It's like training your vocal cords to produce those English sounds authentically.
Interesting.
A lot of these guys recommend starting with short, simple sentences,
Right.
maybe from a children's show or a slow podcast.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You wouldn't expect someone to nail a Shakespearean monologue on their first try.
Right.
So what are some other tips for effective shadowing?
Recording yourself is key.
Okay.
It's amazing what we miss when we're just listening.
Right.
So by comparing your recording to the original, you can pinpoint those areas where your pronunciation needs work.
Gotcha.
Also, don't be afraid to slow down the audio if you need to.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a speed contest.
Right.
The goal is accuracy, not speed.
This connects to another piece of advice that popped up a lot in these sources.
Yeah,
Don't be afraid to make mistakes,
absolutely.
especially early on.
Mistakes are inevitable.
Ugh.
See them as feedback, not failures.
Yeah.
Each stumble helps you kind of refine your pronunciation and build confidence.
Speaking of confidence,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of talk in these sources about the importance of speaking early on.
Yeah,
Some people might think,
right.
why bother speaking until I'm at least somewhat fluent?
It's the classic waiting for the perfect moment trap.
Right.
The truth is, there's no such thing as the perfect time to start speaking.
Yeah.
The sooner you jump in, even if it feels awkward at first,
Mm-hmm.
the sooner you'll identify areas to focus on and build those all-important speaking muscles.
So it's better to make those mistakes in a safe environment,
Right.
maybe with a language partner or a tutor,
Yeah,
than to wait until you're put on the spot in a real-life situation.
exactly. And that brings us to another key element of active learning.
All right.
Finding opportunities for real-world practice.
So that could be like joining a language exchange group,
Exactly.
finding a conversation partner online,
Mm-hmm.
even just chatting with English-speaking friends or colleagues.
All great options.
I've heard some people suggest even thinking to yourself in English
Oh, yeah.
as much as possible.
Ab-
Is that actually helpful?
It can be. It's about shifting your internal monologue
Okay.
from your native language to English.
Right.
It's a way to constantly immerse yourself, even if you're not in an English-speaking environment.
Okay.
Start small. Describe what you see around you, narrate your daily activities,
Mm-hmm.
even translate those little thoughts that pop into your head.
That sounds like a fun way to kind of stay engaged with the language throughout the day.
It is.
What about the person who says, I don't have any English speakers in my life to practice with.
Thankfully, we live in a digital age
Right.
where connecting with people across borders is easier than ever.
That's true.
There are countless online language exchange platforms and communities and apps specifically designed for language learning.
Wow.
You can find a conversation partner, a tutor, even a whole group of people to practice with, no matter where you are in the world.
It's amazing to think about all those potential connections just waiting to be made.
Yeah.
But with so many options,
Right.
it can be really tough to know where to begin.
That's true.
Any advice on navigating that digital landscape?
I would recommend starting with apps or websites
Okay.
that offer structured activities
Mm-hmm.
like guided conversations or topic-based discussions
Okay.
that can help ease the pressure of coming up with things to talk about,
Right.
especially in those early stages.
So instead of just hoping for spontaneous conversation to flow,
Yeah.
you have a little bit of a framework to get things going.
It's like having training wheels for your English conversations.
I like that.
And as you gain confidence, you can always branch out to more free-flowing interactions.
This reminds me of something we touched on earlier, the importance of immersing yourself in English as much as possible,
Yes.
but beyond finding conversation partners.
Right.
What are some other ways our listener can create that immersive experience?
It's about transforming your daily environment into an English learning playground. So you can switch your phone and computer settings to English.
Mm-hmm.
Watch movies and shows with English subtitles, gradually working towards no subtitles at all.
Right.
Listen to English music and podcasts.
Okay.
Even simple things like reading English language news articles or browsing social media in English can make a difference.
I've heard some people say that labeling everyday objects around their house with English sticky notes
Oh, yeah.
can be helpful.
It's a classic technique and it works.
Have you ever tried that?
I have. It's about constantly reinforcing those visual associations between the objects and their English names.
Interesting.
It might seem silly at first, but it can have a surprisingly big impact on your vocabulary retention.
I'm definitely going to give that a try.
Yeah,
But what about those people who just don't feel comfortable with the idea of full immersion?
sure.
Maybe they're worried about making mistakes in public or feeling overwhelmed.
It's important to find a level of immersion that feels comfortable for you.
Okay.
You can start small and gradually increase your exposure. Instead of diving headfirst into an all-English environment, maybe you start by watching one movie a week with English subtitles,
Right.
or listening to an English podcast during your commute.
So it's about finding that sweet spot
Yeah.
where you're challenging yourself without feeling overwhelmed or discouraged.
Exactly. It's a journey, not a race.
Yeah.
And remember, even small steps taken consistently can lead to big results over time.
We've talked a lot about speaking practice,
Mm-hmm.
but reading is another really crucial element of active learning.
Absolutely.
One thing that stood out to me in these sources
Yeah.
was this advice to actually read aloud.
Oh, yeah?
Why is that so beneficial?
Wow.
Especially for someone who might not have a lot of opportunities to speak with others.
Reading aloud is a fantastic way to train your pronunciation,
Okay.
improve your fluency, and even build confidence.
Interesting.
It forces you to engage with the language actively, rather than just passively scanning the words on a page. Plus, it can be a really enjoyable way to explore different genres of writing and discover new vocabulary.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I've always found that reading aloud helps me absorb new words and phrases more effectively.
Yeah.
It's like I'm hearing them for the first time, even if I've seen them in writing before.
Exactly. It activates different parts of your brain,
Interesting.
making the learning process more multidimensional.
I feel like we've uncovered a wealth of active learning strategies.
We have.
From shadowing to finding conversation partners to creating this immersive environment.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much our listener can do
Absolutely.
to make their English learning journey more engaging and more effective.
We've certainly explored a lot of valuable techniques,
Yeah.
but there's still more to uncover in part 3,
Okay.
where we'll delve into the world of language learning resources and technology.
Awesome.
Stay tuned as we continue our deep dive into this exciting world of learning English.
Sounds good. Welcome back. We're going to wrap up our deep dive today into learning English quickly. I know we've covered so much ground already,
We have.
but I think there's still a ton of valuable information
Right.
to unpack in terms of resources and technology.
Absolutely.
When I first started learning English, it was all about textbooks and grammar drills,
Mm-hmm.
but now there's a whole universe of apps, websites, online communities
Yeah.
dedicated to language learning.
It's incredible.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the best part is,
Yeah.
so many of these resources are designed to make learning fun and engaging.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing.
Gone are the days of dry, repetitive exercises.
Right.
Now you can learn new vocabulary through interactive games,
Right.
practice pronunciation with AI-powered feedback,
Wow.
and even connect with native speakers from all over the world.
I've been hearing a lot lately about language learning apps.
Oh, yeah.
Some of these apps use gamification
Yeah.
to make the learning process more addictive, almost like playing a video game.
It's a brilliant strategy.
It is.
By incorporating elements of game design, like points, rewards, challenges.
Yeah.
These apps tap into our natural desire for competition and achievement.
It's a sneaky way to make you forget you're actually learning.
Exactly.
I've tried a few of those apps myself,
Yeah.
and I have to admit it's really hard to put them down.
Yeah, they're very engaging.
But with so many options out there,
Right?
how can our listener choose the right app?
That's a great question. It's important to consider your learning style, your goals, and even your budget.
Okay.
Some apps focus on vocabulary acquisition, while others prioritize grammar or pronunciation.
Right.
Some are free, while others offer premium features for a subscription fee.
So it's kind of like choosing a gym membership.
Exactly.
You need to find one that aligns with your fitness goals and your personal preferences.
Exactly. And just like with a gym membership, you might need to try out a few different language learning apps before you find the perfect fit.
Right.
Don't be afraid to experiment and explore until you discover one that clicks with you.
One app feature I find really helpful is the ability to track your progress.
Oh, for sure.
It's so motivating to see how far you've come,
Absolutely.
even if it's just a few new words or like a slightly better pronunciation.
It's a visual reminder of your dedication and the effort you're putting in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of progress, a lot of these resources emphasize the importance of setting realistic goals and milestones.
Yeah, for sure. It's all about breaking down that big, overwhelming goal of learning English into smaller, more achievable steps.
Okay.
So instead of aiming for fluency right away,
Right.
maybe you set a goal to learn 10 new words a day or to hold a basic conversation with a native speaker within 3 months.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's about creating a roadmap for your learning journey
Yes.
with these clear markers of progress along the way.
Precisely. And as you achieve those smaller milestones,
Yeah.
it reinforces your belief in yourself.
Right.
And it keeps you moving forward.
We've talked about apps, but there's also a wealth of other online resources available,
Oh, yeah.
from websites to podcasts to YouTube channels dedicated to English learning.
Absolutely.
It's incredible how much free content is out there.
It really is. And one of the most valuable aspects of these online resources is the sense of community they foster.
Yeah.
You can connect with other learners from all over the world,
Right.
share tips and strategies, and even practice your English together.
I've joined a few online language exchange groups myself,
Yeah.
and I've been amazed by the support and encouragement from other learners.
It's wonderful.
It's like having this global cheerleading squad rooting for you every step of the way.
It is. It's a powerful reminder that you're not alone on this journey.
Right.
And that sense of connection can be incredibly motivating, especially when you're facing challenges or feeling discouraged.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up our deep dives, is there any final piece of advice
Yeah.
you'd like to offer our listener?
I would say embrace the journey.
Okay.
Learning a language is a process, not a destination. There will be ups and downs, moments of frustration and moments of triumph. But with perseverance, a positive mindset, and the right resources at your fingertips, you can achieve anything you set your mind to.
That's a beautiful sentiment. It's been such an incredible journey,
It has.
exploring all these amazing tips and techniques.
Yeah.
Just remember, learning English is more than just acquiring a skill. It's about opening doors to new cultures, experiences, and connections.
Absolutely.
So keep practicing, keep exploring, and never stop believing in yourself.
And most importantly, have fun with it.
Yeah.
Language learning should be an adventure, not a chore.
I love that.
So go out there, embrace the challenge, and enjoy the ride.
We'd love to hear about your own language learning journey.
Yeah.
Share your thoughts, your
Yeah.
questions, and maybe even your favorite resources in the comments below.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
And until next time, happy learning.